Tom looked down at me with a smug grin on his face. "From today, this house is mine. You'd better think about your next move." As he said that, he spread his arms wide, looking around the spacious room with an elated expression as if he might spin around at any moment. The place we were in was my family home. My father was a wealthy man, and he was very particular about his house. The house that he had painstakingly built was worth $3 million. My father left this precious house to me and passed away just a few days ago. Yet, here was my husband, claiming the house I inherited as his own. Could it be that he thinks the inheritance I received also belongs to him? As I was about to explain that he had no such rights, my husband confidently showed me something. I'm not just making this up. This is the proof. What he held in his hand was, "My name is Emily, and I'm 38 years old. I work as a bank clerk at an online bank. I chose this profession because I believe my parents taught me the importance and the dangers of money. Both of my parents were serious investors. Growing up in a wealthy family, I was strictly educated about money from a young age. Money is precious. You must protect it yourself." That was one of my father's favorite sayings. Just because there was money in our house didn't mean that I could have anything I wanted. I felt I lived a life similar to that of a typical family. My allowance was slightly less than my friends, and we never dined in fancy restaurants. I attended a local public elementary school instead of a private one. Given it was our local area, it didn't take long for word to spread about my family's wealth and our connections. "Emily's family is really rich, right? Must be nice. I bet you can buy anything you want. Do you always have the latest games? Let me come over and play sometime." In reality, I couldn't get everything I wanted, and I didn't have any expensive items, but that became the common narrative. Honestly, it didn't feel good. I believed I was living just like everyone else. In the higher grades of elementary school, my friend Catherine came to me with a problem. And I accidentally broke Karen's game and now I have to pay for it? But I don't have the money. "Emily, can you lend me some?" Catherine had just become my classmate this year. "Haven't you talked to your parents about it?" "And I can't tell them. They would get mad. You're the only one I can confide in about this." I wondered if it would become awkward at school if I refused. But I was always told not to lend money. "Sorry, I don't have it to lend." She looked at me and left with tears in her eyes. The next day, I was called by Karen from the next class. "I heard you ignored Catherine when she asked to borrow money. Your family's rich, but you won't help a friend. Catherine said she can't compensate, so you should pay on her behalf." Why did it come to this when I had nothing to do with it? However, I persisted that I couldn't give what I didn't have. And there's no way you don't have money when you come from a rich family. Why are you lying about not having it? In the end, you care more about money than Catherine. You're abandoning her. So cruel. With that, she left. From that day, unpleasant rumors about me started to circulate. Karen and Catherine began to spread all sorts of nonsense, claiming I had swindled money from them and refused to compensate for a broken game console. The teachers quickly became aware of the situation and reprimanded them. But this only added fuel to the fire. Their slander became more and more extreme, spreading everywhere. Eventually, it reached my parents' ears, and my father had to come to the elementary school. Things escalated to a discussion between the parents pretty quickly. Since then, having received only superficial apologies from them, I haven't interacted with Karen and Catherine, They sometimes just look my way and whisper with sneering smiles. But they never spoke to me directly. During dinner, my father smiled in a troubled manner. "Emily, next time someone asks you to lend them money, tell them your father forbids it. You don't have to say whether you have the money or not. If they still persist, tell them, even though it's forbidden. I'll consult and see if something can be worked out." I was fed up with money-related troubles. I nodded firmly to my father's words. I didn't discuss money afterward and was careful not to invite friends over after enrolling in a new school. I chose friends who understood me well. Even as an adult, I was careful to avoid financial troubles and immersed myself in work to avoid unnecessary inquiries. At 28, I was introduced to my now husband, Tom, by one of my few friends. From the first meeting, he looked at me squarely and was an open and honest person. He was a year younger than me, but he looked about 5 years younger. I was drawn to the straightforward and cheerful Tom. And we married 2 years later. We had a grand wedding ceremony. My parents, worried because I hadn't shown interest in men even after 25, were always anxious about whether I would ever marry. They were overjoyed when I did marry, and they insisted on a lavish ceremony. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Let's have a grand celebration." Your parents are also saying the same. About a month after the ceremony, my father suggested, "Isn't it about time you brought Tom to our house?" I trusted Tom, but I was cautious. His loose lips could reveal something about my family and cause troubles, reminiscent of my elementary school days. However, since we were already married, I decided to introduce him to my family. Seeing my family home, Tom was so astonished he couldn't move. "So Emily is this rich," he said with shining eyes as I showed him around. After leaving, Tom was inquiring all about my wealth on our way back. I brushed it off, saying I wasn't too aware of my family's financial details. But I had a bad premonition. "Actually, your father has been hospitalized." "What? Why? Is he okay?" I was so shocked I didn't know what to ask. "The doctors said they need to conduct more tests. Your father hasn't been feeling well lately. Remember, he hardly ate anything when you both visited." Indeed, my father didn't eat much that day and seemed to have lost weight. "We will get the test results this weekend. Can you come too, Emily?" "Of course, I'll make arrangements to be there." I was genuinely worried about my father. Over the weekend, my mother and I went to the hospital to visit my father. Although he seemed well, there was a hint of weakness about him. When I spoke to him, he responded with a smile, saying only, "Sorry for making you worry. One can't beat age." A few minutes later, the doctor informed us of my father's condition. Apparently, he has pancreatic cancer, and it's stage 4. It has spread everywhere, making surgery impossible. I was at a loss for words, and my mother broke down crying. Why? He always took care of his health. My father remained silent while listening. Pancreatic cancer is often diagnosed late as the pancreas is positioned in a way that it's hard to detect. By the time it's discovered, it's often too late. When we returned to his room, my father, looking resolute, spoke. "I'm sorry. I hope you to continue to live happily." Both my mother and I were overcome with tears. From that day, I visited my father at the hospital as often as time allowed. Due to a recent pandemic, visitations were limited to family members only. Father cherished his time with his friends, so he felt saddened by this restriction. Perhaps driven by this feeling, he seemed to wish for various people to visit our family home. Emily, after I'm gone, please take care of our house. Invite various people and give it meaning. That was his wish to me. How could I fulfill his wish? I thought hard and an idea came to me. I decided to look for a renovation contractor. Tom, concerned about me visiting my father every day on his days off, had been unsupportive ever since I mentioned the family house situation. How's your father's health? It doesn't seem very good. It must be tough on you alone. I'll help take care of your father too. His words were kind. Balancing work and hospital visits was not easy, so I appreciated Tom's support. But his next words changed my feelings towards him instantly. He's Emily's husband. I have to think about the future too. I'd like to know about your father's assets and all. It's not my money to talk about. My father manages the family finances. And if something were to happen to him, my mother would take over. I retorted, money is important. I recently met a judicial scrivener named John who might offer advice. You never know how long your mother will be around. Better to discuss early. I felt like sighing at his insensitivity. Is money all he cares about? Past grievances came flooding back. My father has a trusted lawyer he's known for a long time, so we don't need introductions. But we have to sort out the money. It's important. That's why we'll ask someone trustworthy we've known for a long time. Thanks for the concern, but we're fine. From that day, Tom kept bringing up my father's finances, assuming he was already gone, which distanced me from him. A few months later, after a hard-fought battle, my father passed away. Following discussions with the family, I inherited the $3 million mansion. In accordance with my father's will, Tom didn't even try to hide his keen interest in the inheritance. Was the inheritance from your father progressing? I've heard that there are a lot of taxes on inheritances. So I can introduce someone who can advise us on how to minimize the waste. Despite telling him it wasn't necessary, he kept persistently bringing it up. Emily, you've inherited that big house? That's great. When can we move in? How did you know? I ran into your cousin at the funeral the other day and we chatted a bit, and it came up. I wish she wouldn't discuss such important matters so lightly. I felt angry at my cousin. I may have inherited it, but it's too big for just the two of us. We're not planning on living there. What? Why would you inherit a house you're not going to live in? We should move into that mansion. A happy life awaits us. It's already been decided by everyone. We won't live in that house. Oh, why do you decide everything without discussing it with me? I am your husband, right? I've explained to Tom numerous times that the inheritance won't become our shared property. But he doesn't seem to understand. But more importantly, I had a goal to fulfill my father's wish regarding that house. Perhaps feeling ignored, Tom started showing obvious hostility towards me after that. He attended my father's funeral, but he didn't help at all with the subsequent procedures. After the funeral, there was no time for the bereaved family to catch their breath. I was busy with inheritance procedures, memorial services, and visiting my father's friends. A month passed in the blink of an eye, then 2 months. Just when things seemed to have calmed down, I returned home to find Tom with a sinister smile on his face. Sit down. We need to talk. Wondering what was going on, I listened as he suddenly began to say this. I've changed the ownership of your family home to my name. Here's the proof. A document was placed on the table, labeled Ownership Change Report. I was stunned. Marrying you was a mistake. I didn't realize when we were dating how gloomy and lacking in communication skills you are. Even though your family is rich, your own income is low. You're truly useless. I thought having someone to do the housework would be good, but I can't continue with you. However, I'd hire you as a maid for that mansion. The pay is low, but you can live in the house your father left behind. What do you say? If you refuse, we'll divorce. I have no use for you anymore. Get out. And with that, he presented the divorce papers. What are you suddenly talking about? You changed the ownership. You can't just do that. I had it arranged by the judicial scrivener. What? Well, you'll regret it. I can't continue with you any longer. Let's divorce. Saying that, I signed the divorce papers, packed my things, and left the house. Money can change people so easily. I kept reminding myself of that as I headed towards my family home. The next day, I received a call from Tom. Give me the keys to your family home. It's mine now. Don't be ridiculous. It's not your house. It's the precious family home I inherited from my father. Saying that, I hung up the phone. He wasn't like this when we first met. Money can really change people's hearts. I was once again deeply feeling the terror of money. Now, what should I do next? As I took a moment to think, a loud alarm sounded, indicating that the home security system had been triggered. I heard a banging at the front door. Open the door, Emily. This is my house now. It seemed that the security system had activated because Tom was trying to forcefully enter the house. I don't know what you're talking about. This has always been our family's home. I shouted through the door. Stop joking. I've properly processed everything. Open it now. The sound of him trying to unlock the door and banging on it echoed loudly. I ignored him. Shortly after, a security guard arrived and restrained Tom. He's a stranger. Please take him away. What are you talking about? Didn't I show you the documents yesterday? With the help of a judicial scrivener, I've become the owner of this house. Without hesitating in front of the guard, Tom boasted. But I told him wait a moment and went inside to fetch some documents. Returning to the entrance, I showed Tom a copy of the official registry transcript. This house was definitely inherited by me, and I've properly completed the inheritance registration. This is the proof. Do you get it? Your so-called ownership change document is a fake. Tom was left dumbfounded. Just because someone is a judicial scrivener doesn't mean they can change the ownership without the owner's consent. The color drained from Tom's face. That can't be true, he told me. It'd cost money. But he said he'd process it for his friend me. That's a judicial scrivener's job. Hey, is this person really your friend? How did you meet him? I couldn't help but ask. When he found out that your father was rich and I'd eventually get some of that money. He approached me. He told me he could help with inheritance taxes and advised me on how to distribute the inheritance. He's a very trustworthy person. And when you said you wouldn't live in this house even though you inherited it, I consulted him about it. He told me it'd be troublesome, but for $20,000, he could change the ownership to me, the husband. So I had him do it. As he spoke, Tom's face looked like he was on the verge of tears. He took out his phone from his pocket and began to call. Common, please answer. He kept redialing over and over again. This can't be happening. Why isn't John answering? Didn't you think to research the inheritance registration process or market prices before asking? You spent $20,000 on a worthless piece of paper. You're such a fool. That John person is just a scam artist. You openly talked about money and got completely conned by someone who came to you. Tom, I thought you weren't a bad person, but you were completely corrupted by money. Goodbye. As I tried to close the door, Tom desperately pleaded, Wait, Emily, I was wrong. I want to start over with you. Please, take back the divorce. Isn't this a bit too convenient for you? Security, please take him away. Tom was escorted out by the security. Later, I strengthened the security at my family home and changed our contact details, including mine and my mother's. Tom visited a few times but stopped after being repeatedly turned away by security. 3 months later, amidst the chirping of cicadas, a memorial service for my father was held at the temple he had frequented, and there was a familiar face. It was Tom, who looked utterly emaciated. I wasn't surprised seeing him like this. I knew how he had been living these past months. I had heard about Tom's current situation from a mutual friend. Tom, wishing to reconcile with me, had lied to his boss about work appointments to search for me for hours on end. Eventually, his company caught on, and he faced warnings, demotions, pay cuts, and eventually termination. Furthermore, the all too trusting Tom had been scammed multiple times over these 3 months. He was lured with false promises of reconciliation with me, losing money each time. A genuine friend had warned him, but Tom had instead believed the sweet-talking scammers. As a result, he had amassed a huge debt and had been abandoned even by friends and family. The Tom standing before me now had lost everything. His income, his family, everything. His clothing was ragged, and he looked out of place at a memorial service. Before I could call security, Tom suddenly prostrated himself in front of me. Emily, I'm truly sorry. Tom raised his voice, pressing his forehead to the ground as he apologized. Naturally, this drew attention, and the surrounding people looked at me. Stop. This isn't good timing. Today is an important day for my father, I said in as quiet a voice as possible to Tom. I wanted to get through her father's memorial service without any incidents. I thought that was her way of showing respect to her father. I didn't want to disrupt such an important occasion. However, Tom didn't consider my feelings at all and kept going and apologizing. I truly regret it. I only have you now. He started crying out loudly. His loud cries drew the attention of the relatives who were watching. What's going on? Is everything okay? Did Emily do something? What is this man doing? Various voices could be heard from around. I hated it. It seemed that today's focus would shift from my father to me. Enough is enough. It's my father's memorial service. When will you stop bothering me? Please, security, please help. He's stalking me. The security guards rushed over and grabbed Tom. Emily, Emily. He kept shouting my name as he was taken away. I apologized to those around me. I'm sorry for causing a disturbance during my father's memorial service. After that, the memorial service continued without any issues. I went to the police that day to discuss Tom's behavior. I was ready to file a complaint if anything happened. I also moved out of my family home to cut ties with Tom completely. Actually, I had been planning to move for a while. The move went smoothly since I had already chosen the new place. Later, a friend updated me about Tom's situation. Tom kept visiting my family home and was devastated when he saw the renovations. He was still clinging to the hope of our married life and becoming wealthy. However, he saw Keto on a news program. Keto, the judicial scrivener who had deceived him, was arrested for fraud. Realizing that those who do wrong get punished, Tom regained his composure. Now he has found a meaningful job. As for me, I had a plan to convert my family home into a vacation rental. The renovation went smoothly. Now, the former mansion is operated as a rental villa with my mother. The last time Tom saw the house, it was already a rental villa. The rental villa business is doing very well. I spend fulfilling days working with my mother. Dad, this is what you would have wanted, right? Every time we have guests, I talk to my Father in heaven. I'm glad I could fulfill my Father's wish.